Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. The federal government and ASU reach an agreement on the lingering strike action. Lecturers may return to work in 1 week. Chief Olusegun Obasanjo tells President Goodluck Jonathan to forget about the 2015 presidency in the interest of national unity. The Senate to investigate alleged non-remittance of $48.9 billion to the National Treasury. And thousands of South Africans queue to view the body of former President Nelson Mandela in Pretoria. A quick reminder to you that all our top stories are on our website, channelstv.com, and on youtube.com/channelsweb. To get us on the move, visit m.channelstv.com to view us live on your mobile device. You can also download the Channels TV app for Android, iOS and Windows phones from their respective stores. Of course, it doesn't end there, as you can interact with the Channels Eyewitness feature on our Android and Windows 8 platforms. So if you have a picture or video to share with us, all you need to do is download the Channels TV Android app on your device, swipe to reveal the Eyewitness menu, and then follow the instructions to share your reports, your pictures and videos. Now, it's been a remarkable day for the news. Firstly, the decision by the federal government and ASU to find common ground, thereby ending the strike action which lasted for over 5 months. Then the former President Obasanjo writing to President Jonathan, asking him to forget about 2015. And also the Senate now deciding to investigate the alleged missing funds of about $48.9 billion to the Treasury, which was initially blown open by the governors of Edo and Lagos states. And also confirming the non-remittance last night was the CBN governor. Joining me to look at all this is the Lagos-based legal practitioner, Mr. Jiti Ogunye. Thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10.
For invited.
Now, let's begin with the federal government ASU negotiations. They found common ground now, but it took over 5 months. Would you say that was quite a high price to pay, or how did you see it?
It was too high a price to pay for this kind of conclusion to be reached, in the sense that all the unnecessary vituperation, particularly from the spokespersons of the presidency, Minister of Education, were unnecessary at the end of the day, because earlier today we were told on the airwaves that the federal government had decided not to sack the lecturers or insist on its ultimatum. And I thought that that was a reasonable thing to do. I'm happy that at the end of the day common sense has prevailed, and a strike that ought not to have occurred, eventually, hopefully, will be called off.
But looking at it, I mean, it's almost Christmas and we're heading into the new year. They haven't been in school for half the year. Looking at the future of our education system, what do you think that does to the quality of education that students receive in the country?
When you talk about the future of education, the critical question to pose is whether our education system has a present. If you are afraid of the future, the presupposition is that perhaps the present is good. The present is not good at all. It's ugly. And so if nothing drastic is done, we may just say bye-bye to tertiary education system in Nigeria. Already, the signs are there. The elite basically have no faith in our education system again. Anybody that has any little money is, intent on sending his children abroad to go and school, and so with that kind of thing, you can't sustain a virile tertiary education system. I'm not even talking about secondary education or primary education, which are in a shambles and which, as we know, are racked with corruption, with all sorts of scam, including the UB is a scam, and so on and so forth. So I think that something very drastic has to be done.
Let's just turn our attention to some other news that made the rounds today, looking at the strongly worded letter from Chief Olusegun Obasanjo to the President. Yeah. How would you read that sort of statement?
I read the letter online, and the letter contains very weighty allegations. Granted that the letter had been motivated by very serious disagreement within the PDP, that you then have Chief Olusegun Obasanjo being disenchanted with the president, obviously. If you discount that possible malevolence and partisan bickering, the letter contains weighty, very weighty allegations, including that which borders on training people to assassinate Nigerians. It's in that letter. And fingers were pointed in one direction of the ex-servant of the maximum ruler, Abacha, who recently had been released, and the presidency was accused of facilitating that release, thereby insinuating that the judiciary was manipulated to have that kind of outcome. These are very weighty allegations.
Oh, and yes, they are weighty. What impact does that then have on the pockets of crisis that you find in the party already? You know, you have them already resolving so many different burning issues.
No, quite frankly, the issue is beyond the PDP now. My advice to the president is beyond the usual and customary, attack by presidential aides. These issues are so weighty, they're so weighty that the first thing a serious president should do should perhaps be to go to the Council of State, where all these past head of states or presidents who have been copied the letter and military retirees who are very influential and powerful in the polity can sit down and then resolve their crisis without pushing Nigeria to the brink of disaster. Okay. I say this because what is apparent is that there is a virulent and violent intra-ruling class squabble. And the whole Nigerian duty to resolve that kind of squabble in such a way that the democratic will of Nigeria will not be halted or undermined. I'm going
to let's quickly look at the alleged non-remittance of that whole $48.9 billion dollars by the NNPC. It's not going away. You see the Senate now trying to wade in, etc. What do you think is going to come out of it, and what do you make of that anyway?
That's also a very weighty allegation. And of course, a conspiracy theorist might say that all these are synchronized towards a predetermined end, i.e. that the president has problem with some of his constituency people. But beyond this din, beyond this possibility of accusation and counter-accusation, we need to stay above the fray and look at the serious issues of probity, accountability that have been raised, the issue of corruption that has been raised. And I think that the Nigerian state, I'm not just talking about the Senate now, but also including the presidency, perhaps for the first time, needs to come out clearly to investigate those gross allegations. Because Sanusi later, has said that, look, only about 24% of oil proceeds are remitted to the Federation account, leaving out almost 76%. And that, in a graphic manner, the oil proceeds that are remitted vis-a-vis the petroleum taxes that are remitted show clearly that there's a problem, because the taxes on the profits outweigh the proceeds, and the proceeds from crude oil sales ought naturally to outweigh. So these are very weighty issues, and I think that what the presidency needs to do, what the federal government of Nigeria needs to do, is not to, as it were, come out and say these people are merely politicking. That will not sell. It will wash with Nigerians. The presidency has a responsibility to come out clearly and say this is what it is, and then order serious investigations, because we're talking about billions and billions of dollars involved here.
Okay, I'm going to thank you so much for sharing your insight with us here on the news at 10. I've been speaking with a Lagos-based legal practitioner, Mr. GT Ogunye. We've been looking at several of the issues that have come up today and in recent times here. And now we're going to move on now to something else. And thousands of people came out today to pay their last respects to the former South African president, that's Nelson Mandela, in Pretoria. Earlier today, the first to view his open casket were his family members and visiting heads of government, and later the general public. Our South Africa correspondent Betty Dibia says no cameras or cell phones were allowed around the open casket, but eyewitnesses say the Mandela family members were expectedly quite emotional on seeing his body.
Nelson Mandela's body left the one military hospital in Pretoria at 7 a.m. local time to pass through designated streets. Everywhere the cortege passed, flag-waving people hailed their late leader.
I feel that he must rest. He fought for this freedom. All what he wanted to do, he accomplished it. The mission has been accomplished. It's up to us now to do what he did, to take his legacy and take it to our children, our great children also. And you know that we'll never forget Tata.
Since 7 a.m. when the body of the former president left the one military hospital, this is what we have been seeing on the streets of Pretoria, the capital of South Africa. The words of the song that they're singing there is Nelson Mandela, there is no one else like you.
And at the Union Buildings, the seat of government, a crowd gathered to view the body after the family members and visiting heads of government had done so. To the many frustrated journalists who were not allowed in at the time, no cameras or cell phones were allowed. Some people who were lucky at this point to go through were glad they could.
For me, seeing him laying there as he is, I actually said, you know what, we're actually very fortunate that God was able to give us this person so that we can have something to benchmark ourselves against.
I'm so happy, at least to come and give him the last honor.
On the streets, the people, many of them, lined up to get on designated buses to go and see Madiba, for most of them, probably for the first and last time.
The queue of mourners is expected to grow even longer in the next few days because in there lies Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, in the same place where he was inaugurated as the president of South Africa in the first multiracial elections in 1994. And here will he lie till Friday before his body will be taken to the Eastern Cape for a full military funeral, after which it will be laid to rest. From the Union Buildings in Pretoria, South Africa, I'm Betty Dibia reporting for Channels Television News.
All right, we have some information just coming into us here at Channels Television that the Governors Forum, led by the Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi, are about now meeting at the Rivers Governors Lodge in Asokoro, the Federal Capital Territory. Again, just to say that the Governors Forum, led by the Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi, are about now meeting at the Rivers Governors Lodge in Asokoro, the Federal Capital Territory. Of course, we'll keep our eye on that one and bring you more information and details when we get them right here on the news at 10. Well, the Federal Executive Council convened in the council chambers of the presidential villa today in Abuja with special tributes to Nelson Mandela by the cabinet members. At the meeting presided over by the Vice President Namadi Sambo, the ministers eulogized Mandela and his leadership character and deep spirit of forgiveness. They collectively asked leaders to also imbibe his ideals, principles of selflessness, and fight for the freedom of Africans, which translates to Nigerians. The Vice President also said that Mandela had never wavered in his belief over the fight against apartheid. He consoled members of the family as well.
One could feel the silence in the council chambers as Vice President Namade Sambo presides over the valedictory session in honor of Madiba. On behalf of President Goodluck Jonathan, who is already away in South Africa for the memorials, one after the other, the ministers took their turns to eulogize the man who they said left a mark in the sands of time.
The great Madiba made national reconciliation a primary task of his government. He worked to reassure the white minority of running a multiracial government in a multiracial country where the right of every individual will be protected and guaranteed.
His life has become a great lesson in leadership. It teaches that one may not only be remembered for how rich he is or what position he holds, has held, but how much personal sacrifice he's able to make.
They recalled that Nigeria stood behind South Africa in those dark days. If Nigeria did it for the stability of South Africa at that time, it can do it for itself back home, where acrimony seems to be the bane of Nigerian politics. They call on Nigerian leaders to emulate Madiba's sense of sacrifice.
Particularly the old ones that want to die in power, to see the wisdom in living when it is time to live.
These days, when corruption has reached high heavens, what many did not know was how, as President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela handled the South African economy without any dent on his reputation.
Under him, according to IMF statistics, poverty dropped 10 percentage points. He laid the platform between the time he came out and established the democracy and now. And South Africa's income per GDP was boosted by 40%.
The eulogies were followed by a minute silence for the repose of the soul of Dr. Nelson Mandela. Chukuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, Anambra Governor shifts the attention to the health of mother and child. Please join us again.